about handwriting development in children. So first of all, as an introduction, we know that hand skills are very critical for early childhood learning, and refined hand skills are needed to master handwriting. And hands are like the basic tool that the student are having at school, and they are very important in order to use the hands in a proper way for daily life activities, for handwriting, and especially at school where all the tasks require writing. We often forget that handwriting is not a simple task, and handwriting requires several prerequisites that we often forget. So, for example, in order to write, we need to master several skills before like being able to hold a pen in the proper way. So, as we know also, depending on the maturity and the environment experiences and the interest level of each child, some of them may acquire the pencil grip at 4 years, some of them at 5 years, and some of them can take up to 6 years to be able to hold the pen in a proper way. When we say in a proper way, it means tri-digital grasp with the thumb, the index, and the middle finger. So it is totally normal to, for example, see a child that is 4 years that is not able yet to hold a pen in a proper way. We give time from 4 till 5 years and a half, maximum 6 years. So we're going to talk a little bit about the prerequisites for handwriting. So what do we need? What skills do we need to be able to write in a proper way? So the most important things are the fine motor skills. Fine motor skills, we mean being able to use our fingers in an adequate and precise way in order to perform a task, the hands and the fingers. We need the eye-hand coordination, which is the coordination between the eye and the hand while writing, because when I'm writing a phrase, for example, and my hand is moving on the paper, my eyes should be at the same level of the pen for me to be able to write correctly and to form the letters and to see, for example, if I'm staying between the line. We need, of course, the cognitive skill. By cognitive skills, we mean the attention essentially and the memory, because often attention is needed in all kinds of tasks, but especially in writing when we need to be focused and concentrated. And memory is also very important because the child have to recall the letters and have to be able to memorize the gesture of the formation of the letter. For example, if we're writing a capital A, he has to remember that the A, we're going to start by making two diagonal lines and then a horizontal line in the middle. And that way he will learn, for example, some familiar words to write alone. And we also need the spatial organization. By spatial organization, we mean the discrimination between the letters, especially the letters that are a little bit similar, like P and Q and B and D. We also mean being able to visually perceive the letters and to discriminate between them. And, for example, to respect the spatial limits on a paper when we have to write. For example, if we're writing between two letters, so the paper is also a space and we have to respect the space we are given. Okay, so we're going to start by the fine motor skills. What do we mean by fine motor skills, and what are the activities that we can start doing with our children at home to a little bit work on these fine motor skills. And even though before coming to school, like we can start with activities around 1 year old to do at home that don't require a fancy equipment. We're going to talk about this also. So by fine motor skills, we mean first the finger isolation. So to be able to isolate each finger alone. Okay, so for example, to be able to lift up each finger alone, because when we're holding a pen, we need to hold it with 3 fingers only, and to be able to maintain the last 2 fingers closed. So this position needs for me to be able to keep my 2 last finger closed and open and grab the pen with only 3 fingers. So this is called the finger isolation. Also, I should have an adequate pressure when I'm holding the pen to be able to write, because if my hands and fingers are not well enough developed, I will hold the pen in a very light way, and when I will be writing or drawing, the trace will be very light or will be non-existent. And if we're holding it and we're putting a lot of pressure on the pen, also I will have, for example, cramps in my hands. I will be fatigued because I'm doing much effort to be able to write. And then also, for example, the paper, because it's thin, it's gonna crack. So I should have an adequate pressure, not too light and not too high, to be able to write in a good and fluid way. We also need an adequate visual motor control. So when I'm writing, to be able to respect the spatial limit I'm giving, and for example, to know that some of the letters are higher or taller than some of the letters. When I'm writing E, so the E will be small, and when I'm writing, for example, L, the L should be higher than the E. We also have to work on the association and dissociation of the fingers. That goes along with the finger isolation. So also to perform activity where I'm opposing my thumb to the other fingers, like this. Okay, and the ability to hold the writing tool in a proper way. So for some activities that can be done at home and are very easy to have at home. So for example, we can first use a simple activity, which is the Play-Doh. A Play-Doh can be used like for several means and for several activities, but especially the Play-Doh is a very good choice if you want to work on straightening the fingers and the hand. So for example, we can make shapes with the Play-Doh. We can roll the Play-Doh with 1 hand, then with 2 hands. We can, for example, use it to make small balls with the finger, with 3 fingers, with 2 fingers. Also, we can press on it with each finger alone. We can also make, for example, a line and then to squeeze the Play-Doh with the thumb and the index finger. We also have like the toys that we put the Play-Doh inside and then we have to push. So also we're working on pushing and on resistance. We can also use clothespins, like if we want the child to help us, for example, hang some clothes. So the clothespin also is a very good idea for us to hold it, hold it with 3 fingers, to press down to open and to hold this resistance and then to release it so it will close. So we can also choose the type that is not very hard. So to start with, there are ones that are like plastic and they are big. We can put our 3 fingers and it's easy for the child. We can also use some rubber bands, okay, around the fingers or around the hand. We can also try to pull them with the thumb and each finger, for example, or hold it with both hands and then to open it. We can use also some resistant toys like there are tubes where we can hold them with the right and left hand and then open them. So also we're working on the hand pressure. We can also, for example, fold some clothes, for example, towels where we can fold it with the child. We can also work on making a dough, for example, when we're making pizza with the flour and the dough. So whatever equipment we have at home, it can be used to work on fine motor skills. So these are some of the things we can work. There's also the pegboard where we have the little pegs and we have to insert them inside the hole, the threading beads. Also, if we want to work on the wrist rotation, for example, we can squeeze a lemon with the child to put the lemon and then to try to turn it right and left. So these are type of activities we can work on it at home. And now we're going to move to the eye-hand coordination. So why is eye-hand coordination important for handwriting? So first of all, it's very important to check if the child is seeing properly and to have an evaluation for the eye vision to evaluate if eye function and everything is normal and the child is able to see clearly, because sometimes when we have children that are not seeing clearly and they have to put glasses, this will explain to us why they are still not able to hold the pen in a proper way and write in a proper way. So first of all, we have to ensure that the eyes are evaluated every now and then and the eye function are normal. So the eye-hand coordination is our ability to use our hands and eyes in the same activities. So the activities that can target eye-hand coordination, it starts from an early year when where the child is before the child, when we're working with babies, when they are, for example, grasping an object. So when I'm grasping something, my eye and my hand, they will go on the same direction in order, for example, to hold an object that is on the floor near me at my right or at my left. So for example, if it's at my right, I will tilt my head and I will move my hand to the direction of this object. We also use it in daily life activities where we have to eat. So also when I'm putting my fork inside the food, I have to take it and put it in my mouth. So also I have to look and I have to guide my hand in order to eat. Also, when we are cooking, we are using the eye-hand coordination, and the plays that we use with the children are all the activities, the ball activities. For example, when we're throwing and catching a ball, we are working on our eye-hand coordination. When we're playing all kind of ball activities like the basket, the tennis, the ping pong, everything related to ball activity. And this is very important for handwriting, because handwriting, we also need to guide our eyes and our hands in forming correctly the letters and in staying between the lines. So this is why eye-hand coordination activities are also important, and we can start with playing with the ball with the child at an early age, like starting 2 years, 2.5 years. We can take a big balloon, which is not hard, which is soft, and then gradually we can decrease the size of the ball and decrease the distance. So we can also learn how to roll the ball, to play, for example, to throw a ball into a target or to play bowling. So all these kind of activities are very important to develop the eye-hand coordination. After this, we have the spatial organization. So what do we mean by spatial organization? We said that the paper is a space for the child in order to be able to write on it. So if, for example, we are writing on a paper, on a board, we are writing on a space, and we should pay attention on the space. For example, if we have to arrange our handwriting regarding the limits we have. So if the lines are two big lines, I should maintain, for example, my handwriting inside. And if, for example, the lines are smaller, I should maintain my handwriting inside the small lines, and I have to pay attention, for example, to stay in the spatial limits, not to go down, to fully have my eyes paying attention on everything I'm writing. And these activities, we can work on them before going to school and before like starting to write, by, for example, doing all activities that require us to play with toys that are related to space. So, for example, the Lego, the blocks, when we're building, when we're trying, for example, to fill and to empty toys from inside a box, when we're even trying to make fit some of the blocks inside, for example, a container. This is also, we are using our spatial organization to be, for example, able to fit all the cubes inside the box. So the child has, for example, to start putting the blocks and then to see, oh, if I have two more, I have, for example, to move this one down, this one on the left, to be able to make them all fit. And this is like a great activity because we are also working on a spatial limit and spatial organization. It comes before writing on the paper, because writing on a paper, we will do the same, but we will do it on a paper and not with real objects. So this is also very important for handwriting. And last, the cognitive function. As we said, while writing, we have to use our attention and our concentration, because we have to remember the form of the letter. That's why we're going to use our memory for retention. And for example, it's very important, for example, when we're copying from the board, if I have a good attention and a good memory span, I can, instead of trying to write each letter alone and to look several times on the board, I can, for example, the word school, if I will try to read it and then to keep it in my memory, it will be easier for me to recall it without having to look each 1 second to write, for example, S, then C, then H, and this will later affect my speed. So the memory is very important, and the attention very important when we move to higher grade, especially for the speed of writing. So for the memory, regarding first attention, all kinds of activities that are done at school or at home or anywhere require from us like a type of attention. At school, we use a lot the sustained attention, which is the ability to stay focused for a long period of time. And we also use the selective attention when we have to select something between a group of distractors. And for the memory, some of the activities we can use at home are, for example, the memory game, the difference game, for example, the matching game, when we have to open two cards to see if they are matching, to use plastic cups and to hide some objects under them and then to move them, and also, for example, to hide objects at home and then to let the children find it. So the stage of development, we know that the development of the hand function, it happened with maturity, with age, and with time. So first of all, around 1 to 1.5 years, the child will hold the pen in a palmar way. He will use his finger and his palm to hold the pencil. because the fine motor skills, the refined motor skills and the fingers will not be developed enough to make him able to hold the pen correctly. So he will try by grasping it and the whole hand. After this, by 2 to 3 years, he will start using more his finger on the pen. So he will use all his fingers to put it on the pen, but still it will not be a refined hand motor skills. Around 3 years to 4 years, the pencil grasp will be more precise, where we see that the fingers of the child is more on the pen and not holding it in a palmar way. And around 4 years and a half till 6 years, the child will learn how to dissociate, like we said, his fingers and try to hold it in a tripod grasp with the thumb, the middle finger, the index finger on top, and the middle finger down, supporting the pen. So also we should also put attention on our postures when we are writing, because the posture can influence a lot our handwriting. Sorry. So as we said, the functional handwriting should be around starting 4 to 6 year old. So we should check the body posture. For example, the chair and the table should be at a good height regarding the height of the child. It should not be taller than the child, and if the child is tall, it should not be very low. So the chair has to be with the back, so he will be able to sit in a 90-degree and put his back on the back of the chair in a 90-degree angle. Then we have to bend the knees also at a 90-degree and keep our feet flat on the floor. After this, we have to put our hands on the table and the elbows especially, and we stabilize the paper with the non-dominant hand, and we write with our dominant hand. So if I'm right-handed, I will write with my right hand, and then I will support the paper or stabilize the paper with my left hand. And also the paper should be a little bit tilted according to my dominant side. So if I'm right-handed, I'm gonna tilt it a little bit to the right, and if I'm left-handed, I'm gonna tilt it to the left to be able to have a more efficient way to write. This means when we are writing and we arrive at the end, for example, of the opening of the hand, when we're tilting it a little bit, I will have a bigger range of motion to be able to write. So that's why we tilt the paper a little bit on the right or on the left. So this is our body posture. We also pay attention that when we're holding the pen, we're exerting an adequate and normal pressure on the pen. So not too strong and not too light. And our head should not be too far from the paper or too close to the paper. It should be a sufficient distance from the paper. And we often see that some of the child, when they are writing and they are bored, some of the time they put their elbows on the table, they put their heads on the elbow while they are writing. So we have to pay attention that the head also should be in the right direction. It should be looking at the paper when we are writing. Okay. Okay. Now we arrive at what we call the stages of the handwriting. So as we know, when we start to draw or to write, we don't start by writing the letters right away. So there are different stages that the child will go through in order to develop his handwriting. So first, we call the scribbling stage, which is at an early stage, when we give a pen to a child, he will take it, hold it in a palmal way, and he will just draw like movement with the pen, some of the time in a circular movement, and this will not like have a meaning. It's just him discovering his hands, discovering the use of his hand, discovering the space he have, the colors. So he will often hold the pen with both hands. For example, try one color, then hold another color with the another hand. So this is a very good and a very important phase for him to discover and to experiment with what he can do with his hand. So here it's very important to give him some sensory experiences, to, for example, give him different kind of writing tools, the paint, for example, the chalk, big pens, small pens, different colors, different texture, for him to really experience everything and experience also his right and his left hand, to be able after to determine which hand is the dominant hand and which side is performing better. So after this stage, we have the drawing stage. So it starts by around 2 years and a half, when the child will access a new level, when he will be able to start to draw some meaningful forms or some meaningful figures. So he will start by, for example, doing a circle, doing the sun, try to, for example, draw his family or draw himself. And this is also a stage where it's very important to put words on what the child is drawing, even if we feel that the figure he is drawing is still not very clear, but to like make good reinforcements for the child, and to always, for example, ask him, what are you drawing now? Is it me? Is it dad? Who are you drawing? We will try to color. We will try this different kind of tool. So also it's very important to put words on what he's drawing. After this, we have the part where around like 4 years and a half, we start by working on the pre-handwriting patterns. So the pre-handwriting patterns are the patterns we start to form before acquiring or writing the letters. It's everything related to doing the curves, different kinds of lines, the points, like the stairs, the waves. And there are different studies that, for example, say that pre-handwriting patterns are important for a better stage after to acquire the letter. And some of them, they said that this is not really important because it's not like purely writing, so we don't have to do it. So it's up to the family or up to school if they want to work on this, but I feel this gives the child a little bit more like stability and more fluidity in writing after, because we have a lot of letters that contain pre-handwriting patterns. So when the child will be able to perform lines, to perform curves and waves, it will be easier for him after to acquire letters, because a lot of letters, they have curves and they have lines and they have diagonal and they have zigzags. So for me, I feel it's easier after to acquire the letters to start by working on the pre-handwriting patterns. And also this can be done with a lot of tools. So it's not only a paper and the pen, it can be done with the Play-Doh, with the sand, with the finger, with the paint, with I don't know, with the chalk, with different kinds of tool and different kinds of textures also. After this stage, we move to the single letter stage, where the child is now working on acquiring the adequate formation of the letter of each letter. So usually we start by working on capitals letter first, and then move to the small letters. And then after working on all the letters of the alphabets, and after assuring that the child can recognize visually each letter and can write it in the correct form and the correct direction, we move to writing words, then writing sentences, then writing paragraphs. Okay, so as we said, also when we are writing, we are using one hand. So this is called the hand dominance, and this is the ability for the child to use and to decide which side of his body is the dominant side, and whether he's going to hold the pen with the right or the left hand. So usually also it's around 5 to 6 years. So with the development of the writing, that the child will see and will decide with which hand he will use the writing tool. So one thing we should do, for example, at home, when we're at an earlier stage, is to observe and to let the child experience everything with both hands. So, for example, when he's starting to eat alone, let him touch the food with both hands, putting food in his mouth with both hands, using his hands in like all the activities, and not only give him, for example, toys on the right side or on the left side, to put the objects in the middle. Okay, so this will not influence his choice, and let him decide the use of the hands he wants. And we also see that before the age of 6, the child will often switch hand. He will switch hand, or because he's fatigued with one hand, so he will move to the next hand, or because he's still experiencing and still determining which hand is the hand that has more speed and more fluidity after. So it's very important to let him decide, and to like have an eye at home and to try to see with all activities we are doing hand function activities, which hand he uses more when he wants to eat, when he wants to drink from the bottle, when he wants to open the door. So to see also spontaneously which hand is more used. So regarding also the pencil choice and the pencil forms we have, so nowadays we have a lot of choices regarding the pencils and the pens, and often we get the child only the pen that, for example, he likes with the color that he chose, and this also can influence his handwriting, because not all the pens are adequate for a good handwriting, especially if we feel that or we sense that the child has difficulty in handwriting. So regarding the pencils, we usually start with thick pencils and markers because they are easier for the child to hold. So the bigger for them, the better and the easier it is. So this is why we often use the triangle shaped crayons, because their grip is easy and thick. We can use also the jumbo coloring pens and the big markers. And after, in the upcoming years, when we're using pens, the best choice I find for like difficulties or for inadequate pencil grasping is this kind of pen which has an anti-slip part, so that will ensure a good grip, and the roller and the ink inside, it's like a roller, so it will rotate and it would glide smoothly because of the gel ink, and it will ensure a better regular line, and it would avoid pressure. So and also we have on the grip, we have like a special place for the fingers, so it's easier for the child to put his fingers also on it. Okay, now we're gonna move to the type of paper we use, and if we should, for example, start with what kind of paper and what kind of paper you use at school. So the first step, when the child is just starting to write, usually we start with a blank space, so a blank paper, and usually we go from the big to something small. So that's why we also see that in the beginning of acquiring writing, the handwriting will be very big because the child is working on forming each letter. It's still something new for him, so he has to pay attention on different things that we talked about, the prerequisites of writing, and he's not yet able to follow or to write between a small spatial limit. So that's why we will see a big handwriting, and it's totally normal when we are starting to acquire the writing of the alphabet to have a big handwriting. So we will start with blank papers. The next step, we will start by reducing the spatial limit to 2 big lines. Then we will continue to smaller lines. And then we will arrive to writing between smaller and smaller lines. So it depends of each school and which type of paper or lining they choose. But in the development of handwriting, it should not, like, we should not start with something very small, because it will be very hard for the child. He will not see the spatial limit. He will write, even if there is line, he will still write in a big handwriting. And to start with a blank space, and then to make it a little bit smaller. So according to the letter formation, it's very important also to teach the child the good orientation of each letter. Why? Because first of all, when we start teaching the child a good orientation, he will recall it more easily than having to change after the formation of the letter. So he will have the steps in his head. Okay, and for example, we can start by putting a dot or a visual color for him to start, for example, writing from the dot. And after, when we have, for example, a wrong orientation of the letter, it will affect our speed after, because we will take more time in the formation of each letter. So it's very important to teach the good orientation and the formation of the gesture of each letter. And it depends how we want to start, by like giving the alphabet to the child. There are many ways to start, and there are many family groups like we can start with. I found this technique more helpful than other, because it's like a visual technique that regroups letters that are similar in the writing and the movement of the letter. So the anti-clockwise letter, we have the A, C, D, etc. So we're doing an anti-clockwise orientation. The clockwise letter, the B, the H, the K, M, N, etc. The straight letters, and it's easy on the child to understand, like I, L, T. The underarch letter, the diagonal letters, and the curvy letters. And for example, I try to choose one letter from each category to work on it. And then when I'm adding another letter, I can tell the child, so the C, you can start doing it like the A. So he will also have in his head already, he will know how to write the A. It will be easier for him to acquire another letter that is similar to the A. Okay, so this is one of the example how to regroup each letter in order to facilitate the task on the child. Okay, so also this is what I mean by the directions of the letter. For example, where we should start, how many lines, if we have to start on top or at the middle or at the back. So these are the capital letters. We start usually by working on the capital letters because they are bigger, so it's easier. And then we move to the small letters. And with the small letters, we can regroup the lowercase letters in the way that we want, in the way that we find is more easy on the child to understand. So after, when we acquired all the letters of the alphabet and we are starting writing sentences and then paragraph, there is something that is really important while writing. It's the speed in reading and in writing, because the speed will affect after all the academic like performance of the child, when he is copying, when he's writing for an exam, when he's writing an essay. So he should like have a proper speed in writing, and if he is, for example, too slow, we should also work on increasing his speed. So for example, one of the things I do with a child, for example, that is very slow, we choose a phrase, for example, a small phrase, and we start by timing his speed. So for example, a phrase can take 1 minute with a child, and with another child it can take more. It can take 2 minutes. So we start by the time the child takes in order to write this phrase. So I don't try to compare him to other children, to tell him, no, you should speed now, you are very slow, you write like a turtle. No, we will start by looking at his potential and his speed, okay? And we're gonna try a little bit to decrease it, okay? So we're gonna work, okay, you took 2 minutes to perform the first phrase. So the next time I'm gonna try to limit the time to 1 minute 45 seconds, and then to decrease progressively. So we will try to let him challenge himself with a timer or an hourglass without comparing him to others. So this is really important, because when the child is feeling that he's being stressed or he's feeling a lot of pressure from the teachers and from the school, from the parents, and they are saying your handwriting is big, your handwriting is slow, it's not beautiful, it's unreadable. So this also will create like a bad experience from writing, and it will also make him feel anxious, or in worst case he will stop to write. So it will be a task that he hates, and he will try to avoid it in any way. So we don't want this to happen, and we want the writing process to be like a meaningful and a good experience for him. And also one thing, usually the children that have difficulties in writing, they have also difficulties in reading. So this is very related and correlated, because when I am writing, I am also reading and discriminating the letters. So this is also will affect the reading process and the writing process. So this is why it's also important not to like let it go, and to, for example, work on it. So when do we have to consult, or where we have to start an intervention? So as we know, like when we start early intervention is very important because it will reduce the potential difficulties in the future. The more we start at an early age, it will be easier on the child and on, for example, the therapist and at home, because the child will not have yet a personalized way of writing, and it will be easier for us to work again on the prerequisite skills that we talked about, because having a handwriting difficulty, it can vary. It can, for example, have the child can have only a difficulty in the fine motor skills. So I'm going to work on fine motor skills before giving him the pen. He can have only work on his eye-hand coordination. He will maybe have some other difficulties that are making his handwriting bad, or his handwriting not in a good way. So usually there are some things that comes with handwriting difficulties. So when we usually see a slow handwriting, we usually do a global assessment in psychomotor therapy that is not only for the writing part. So we see the fine motor skills, the gross motor skills, the spatial organization, the holding of the writing tool, the posture, the dominance of the hands, how is he performing, and everything that can influence the handwriting. So it's very important to know the trigger and to know why, in order to have an efficient therapy. Or sometimes we can just give recommendation at home for the parents to use, and sometimes we can advise the parents to take session and to give recommendation to the teacher at school. So it's very important to, when we notice there is something that is out of the normal, that is delayed. Of course, we're not talking before like 5 years. So we're talking when the child is starting to use his hand in a more proper way, when we start to feel that there is no much pressure with the hand, his hands are too light, he can open something that it's easy, he's not able to grasp in a proper way, after he's not at all able to hold the pen. So we should ask ourselves why, and it's better to make an assessment. So this is I have 3 little tricks when we are facing hand grasping difficulty with the child. So, or the child is using 4 fingers or using the pen in a wrong way. A small tip how we can improve the grasping of the tool. So we have the little help tools that we insert in the pan to be able to hold it in a tripod grasp, but often these are not very comfortable. So we have to check if the material is comfortable for the child, because not all of them are soft and comfortable. Okay, we can also use an elastic band, which is very easy to find and very effective. So we put the elastic in the dominant hand, then we do a little knot and we put the pen inside. This will help the pen stay on the crease between the thumb and the index finger, and will avoid the pen to tilt like this in a standing position. So we want the pen to be like sleeping or touching the crease of the finger here. Okay, so I will put it again. Okay. Second, so when we have the pen on the table, we're gonna put the pen facing us, so facing the child. Okay, we're gonna open it. So this is the pen. We open the pen. We use our thumb and index finger, and we just flip it to the back. Okay. And here we can use a small pom-pom or ball or play-doh that we can put inside the ring and the pinky finger, and we close our fingers on the little ball, and we tell the child not to open the fingers because the ball will fall. So this will help him isolate his finger, use only the thumb, index, and major middle finger, and to close the last two fingers. Okay, so I'm done with the PowerPoint. Please, if you have any question or you want to say something, please can you drop it in the chat so that I can see it.